Hello and welcome. I'm Andrea McMillan Humphrey, and this is Living and Learning. Today, I am opening a series that is a part of the Living and Learning with Andrea McMillan Humphrey podcast. And today's series is called Visual Conversations with the Wisdom Keepers. Together, we will enjoy these conversations on the last Monday of each month. This is where we will sit with voices whose lives carry depth, perspective, and wisdom. These conversations create a space to listen and to honor the value of experience in our world as we reflect on what a life can teach us. And today, I am truly delighted to introduce my first guest in this series, Amber Chand. This conversation with Amber is about what becomes possible when life asks us to begin again in a new way. And frankly, I can't think of a more beautiful person to explore this with than Amber. Amber Chan is a visionary entrepreneur, global storyteller, spiritual activist, and an inspirational speaker whose Dream a New Dream programs and international visionary retreats offer potent vision for living into a new story with courageous love, fearless imagination, and enlivened wisdom. As an Indian woman born in Uganda, who was expelled in her youth from her country as a refugee, Amber speaks on the power of resilient spirit in our world. And she weaves together the sacred and the strategic, the ancient and the visionary, the mystical and the practical, recognizing that it is in this dance of seeming opposites that our creative powers emerge and our visionary new story begins. Today, not that it happened today, but today, at the age of 75, she is writing her book, Tales of the Boat Woman. This is a three-part volume based on ancestral stories from her Indian lineage, creative memoir, and wisdom teachings from the boat woman. Amber has dedicated this book to her two young grandsons, River and Shay, soon to be keepers of the family ancestral lore. And now, here's the good part. I am so excited to have this conversation with Amber. Welcome, Amber.
Ah, welcome, Andrea. Why do I find myself laughing so delightedly? Because you are a delight. And firstly, congratulations, my friend, on launching this podcast. And I love the whole vision of it. And then, of course, I'm chuckling because the idea of being wisdom keepers and ancestral, I mean, all of it is so big and beautiful as it should be. So thank you so much for inviting me to this conversation. So let's see how it emerges
See
and
how it
unfolds.
goes. Well, I'm just grateful we're together. I mean,
Yeah.
we're so far apart. You over there in who knows Maine or somewhere,
Yes,
and
I
you're in,
arrived in Maine. Yes,
and here I am
and you're
in
in
San
San Miguel, and
Allende.
so yeah,
Let
yeah.
me ask you a question here.
Hmm.
How are you arriving in this space today?
How am I arriving in this particular space
Yeah,
I'm
how
in?
are you arriving here today? You know.
Well, I am actually a little exhausted. I drove for almost 5 hours to the beautiful home of my friend, her daughter, in on the coast of Maine. So honestly, I can feel the salt in the air and the breezes. So I'm in a very beautiful part of Maine, and I can't wait to spend a few days here.
Oh,
Um,
lovely,
I'm
lovely.
I'm happy. Yes.
Well, for me,
Yeah.
this is stepping outside of my comfort zone once more.
Mm.
And whenever I do this, I say, "Hey, why are you doing this?" But here I am after rushing around like the Energizer bunny right up until I hit go live. And so bear with me today. And that goes for
Mhm.
you too, audience out there. And
Yes,
thank you for coming. Uh,
yes.
Amber, let's start with
Hmm.
talking a little bit about what part of your life feels most meaningful to you right now.
You know, it's such an interesting question when you are 75. I'm turning 76 in August. And I think as I look at my life now, and it's the trajectory of all that has happened before. So it's a beautiful time to look back. And so asking this question, I mean, what is the most meaningful experience? It's such a big question. So one breaks it down. And so first, let me just say that I come from Uganda. I was born in Uganda of Indian parents, and that absolutely colored and influenced who I am in the world. Because as a child, I grew up in this beautiful tropical world and where I was exposed to many races, many cultures, the diversity of life of the world I was in. I was sent to a British boarding school at the age of 10, where I was for the next 7, 8 years. So by the time I arrived at 20 years old, so much of the foundations of my life had already been laid out. And I think that's a very interesting thing for us. We can look at the reimagined stories, the chapters we've lived, but I look back at the foundations. And to tell you the truth, dear Andrea, I feel so blessed that I was very deeply loved by my mother and father. I had a very loving family. And because of that, I grew up with a certain, what would we say, a certain faith, a certain trust that life would be loving because I was growing up in that environment. So,
And then, what a
yeah,
shock. What a
sorry?
shock. I said, and what a shock when you had to deal with the realities of real life and world when you were expelled from your country.
Yes, yes. At the age of 21, suddenly the beautiful life that was being created, um, this life of comfort and security and safety was suddenly torn apart. And we were given 90 days. So I just quickly, the president of our country at that time, Idi Amin Dada, tyrannical dictator, showed up on the radio one August afternoon and said, "Everybody of Indian origin, you must leave my country. Otherwise, you will be shot dead within 3 months." And that's exactly what we were told. So suddenly, we lost everything, our beautiful home on Kololo Hill. Assets were frozen. Our properties were confiscated. Father left with a suitcase and $5 in his pocket. My father was an eminent lawyer, as was my mother. So, so here suddenly, this 21-year-old girl finds herself abandoned by life, betrayed by life. What do you do? And this is where I think the deepest choice we make is where we are in our own power. Because you see, events happen, terrible events happen. But what is important is the story we tell about the event, the meaning we give the event. If I let myself be haunted, imprisoned by that event at 21, I would be a very depressed, unhappy, vengeful, traumatized young woman. I am not that woman because I knew that even though Idi Amin had destroyed everything about my life, he could not destroy my spirit. No one can destroy our spirit unless we let them.
That is
Therein
that
lies some.
That is so true. And over the course of a lifetime, we all move through seasons of change, identity shifts, role transitions, those moments when uncertainty asks us to pause and to
Mm.
listen more deeply. And these passages often shape us in ways we don't expect. We are always, and I will apologize for those little dings that's dinging because that's people contacting me. I'm very popular.
You are popular. You are, as you should be.
Well, these ways that the way that the world and experiences shape us
Yes.
reveal layers and layers and layers. And as we reflect on those layers, we realize that we're always becoming, we're always moving, and hopefully, depending on our mindset mastery, we move in positive ways. And so I'd love to hear about a time in your journey when something shifted for you. I know that that traumatic having to be expelled from your country was a major event in your life. But as a turning point, how did that really affect who you are right now?
As I knew, you see, these questions are very deep because when you get to be 75, it's almost like you're looking at the entire landscape of your life.
Mhm.
Let me just offer you this this idea of identity. Who am I? At a very young age, as I said, I grew up in this very wonderful world of black, white, brown. I mean, it was a multicultural, multiracial world. And I became very worried at a certain point in my adolescent life, late adolescence, where I asked myself, who am I? Am I African? I'm born in Africa. Am I Indian? I am of Indian lineage. Am I British? I have been schooled and educated and enculturated by the British. Who am I? This this puzzled me deeply. And I wavered in life. I couldn't find my compass because I didn't know who I was. Until one day I came across two words in an article. I was about 20 years old at this point, 21 years old. And the two words literally shifted my entire life because now I knew who I was. And the two words I came across were global citizen. Now I did not have to worry. Am I Indian, African, British, American? I did not have to ask myself to have such a national sense of identity. I was much bigger in terms of that sense of who I am, the global citizen, which brings me to that deeper place of what is home. You see, all my life, home has been a very, very essential part of the journey for all of us. Where do I belong? Who am I? Where do I belong? So when I began to realize I was a global citizen, the world became my home. And I could feel, I felt incredibly safe in that sense of belonging to the world as its citizen, and therefore responsible as a citizen of the world to create something beautiful as I grew, as I moved on. So that's just a little bit of a tiny little story, but that actually has impacted me greatly to
Mhm.
this day. So
At what point in your life do you think did you begin to recognize yourself more clearly? Was that it? Those two words, global citizen, was that the major shift?
that was a shift at it was a foundational shift.
Yeah,
So that,
because
that
that
was
was very
a part of
early.
who I am very early. But I would say, the way I look at life is that we all live in a story. So when it comes to questions of who am I, the question to me is, what is a story I'm living in?
Mhm.
There's something very interesting when you have that perspective because it allows you to be more dynamic about your life. It allows you to shift the
Mhm.
narrative, to
Yes.
change the story. Because if you feel this is who I am and I'm stuck in this person, and partly because of all the trauma that has gone before, because often we will look at the past and say, you see what happened to me? That is who I am. But in fact,
Yes.
it's not true.
Yes. Well, so
So
many. Yeah. Go ahead.
yeah, yeah. So I find that incredibly helpful. In fact, my work now is as a visionary life coach and mentor to people who are going through times of profound transition because they're changing one story to another. And so,
And that's one of the things I wanted to ask you about your dream, a new dream program.
mhm,
The whole idea of it, the thought of it, the name of it suggests that we might want to consider not living our lives in past stories. And we
yes,
all have stories. And so, whether or not we choose to relive the past, remain in the present, or imagine a new story, one that, as you say, uses your imagination.
yes,
Create the life that you want to
yes.
have.
That's right. That's right. I
Tell
love
us
that.
about Dream a New Dream.
Yeah. I mean, just as a preface to that, I mean, I think the question you've asked me is what is a moment in
Mhm.
my life? And I mentioned the global citizen, yes. But I would say the moment that something profoundly shifted for me was when I turned 60, right? So that's almost 16 years ago. At that time, I was a businesswoman. I'd founded some companies that were doing remarkable work with artisan women around the globe, artisans. I was married, and I had a certain particular life. I had a particular story I was living in. But on my 60th birthday, I arrived at a beach in a place called Nantucket, and some friends had invited me. And I stood at the edge of the water, and I arrived very broken. My marriage was now dissolving. The company I was part of was also dissolving. My health wasn't very good. In fact, I had been in the ER, um, thinking I had a heart attack. So when you look at this woman at 60, she's broken. But what was important was not that I was broken. It was the story I was living in was broken. Just that perspective is powerful. So as I stood on the beach, I had three questions that instructions, let's call them, that came to me very quickly because there I am, broken, my story, I'm unhappy, marriage, blah, blah, blah. But here are the three instructions that I received. One, what do you love? What enlivens you? What makes you happy? What gives you joy? This is not a frivolous question. It is a very profound question that we must be responsible to. So when I was asked that question at the beach, okay, Amber, what do you love? I had to actually go when I left that place and create a love map. I didn't actually even know what I loved. I knew what I didn't love. I knew the problems. I knew what didn't work. But did I know what made me happy and joyful? So that's the first instruction I got in that moment love. Second instruction how will you contribute and express what you love to your world? Because now you're not doing this to hoard it, to keep it to yourself. You are here, at least that's what I was being told. You are here to express your love, your contribution to the world. Do not hoard. And the third one was what are the gifts I've been given to take this out into the world? So the three instructions, which I would love your listeners to pay attention to. What is it you love? What gives you joy and enlivens you? What is it? How will you contribute this to to your world? And what are the gifts you've been given to do that? Those three, would you believe it? 9 months later, after that moment on the beach, I did my first international retreat for women in India. I then began to do a one woman show, 90 minutes memorized, called Searching for the Moon, that I toured. I then developed my visionary coaching business, which is now taken off in wonderful ways. So all of that has come from those three questions, instructions, I should say.
Mhm, mhm.
So there it is.
There it is, and it's wonderful. It's a wonderful vision, and it's a wonderful vision to share with people because sometimes we reach a point when we think it's over. And I like to say to the women I work with that we're not done. We're not done in the least, and it hasn't anything to do with age as to when that determination is made. You know, even when it comes to wisdom, sometimes I think that some of the wisest little statements I've heard from one or the other of my grandchildren who are
That's
10, 7, and 5.
mm,
So when we think of wisdom and what a life can teach us, your life, just listening to it. And of course, I've heard some of your story before, and I'm always fascinated. And I always end up learning something new about how to navigate life, especially when life is hard, when life, as I say, throw you curveballs, some of which you duck and some of which you cannot. And so when you don't, duck that whatever it is coming at you, and you have to deal with it head on.
yes.
What are
Yes.
some of those qualities that we have to have within us?
Yeah.
Strength, determination, perseverance, resilience, things like that, that help
Yes.
us navigate life, which is
Yes.
always unpredictable. We never know from
Yeah,
moment to moment what's going to happen next.
that's
And
right.
so I always say I like to live my life bird by bird. Allow it to
Bird
slow
by bird.
bird by bird.
That's adorable. Love
And, but it allows me to have a certain kind of freedom of self and thought when I'm not always holding on, particularly to the past. I love this idea of creating new stories.
yes. Yes.
So, what has all of this taught you over time?
Yes. 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 Ah, that's I would like to say that, you started the podcast by talking about becoming.
Mhm.
And I love being 75. Why? Because I now get a chance to look back on the old stories and
Mhm.
look at the ways that life burdened me when it didn't need to. So I have
Yes.
an acronym I say to my friends, because we talk about PTSD, we talk about ADHD, we have all these things. So I came up with E EPHH. And somebody said, "What is an EPHH?"
What
I
is
said,
that?
"Easy peasy, happy, happy."
Oh, cool. I really like that.
Easy
Easy,
peasy,
easy
happy,
peasy, easy
happy.
happy.
Easy peasy, happy, happy. Because it's almost like the sort of sense that of course life is hard. Of course these things happen, but it's how we meet it. And easy peasy, happy, happy, it gives me a chance to say, like I said to a client recently, they were talking about struggle. They kept using the word struggle. And I suddenly said, because I think language has a lot to do with how we meet life, the language we use, the words we use. So I said to her, I said, why don't you use the word snuggle instead of struggle? And she said, oh, I said, think about that. How would you snuggle with life? Because you speak always about struggling with life, you know?
What
So
did she
that
say?
she was like, "Oh, I gotta think about that." I said, "Yeah, absolutely. Easy peasy, happy, happy." Now, somebody might say, "Oh, Amber, you're being so superficial." No, it's actually very wise to meet life from the place of effortlessness. Easy peasy means effortlessness.
Absolutely.
Doesn't mean be lazy, doesn't mean don't do all of it, but you do it with an effortlessness because you are expressing your gift.
And it's
That
okay to do it with a smile and a laugh.
ah,
You
and
know,
I
people
laugh.
talk
So I am more play. So match. So I said my three words now: magic, mischief, and merriment. We'll throw in money, throw in miracles, throw in magnificence. It's all the ebbs. But the capacity to be playful with life,
Absolutely.
the seriousness, oh God, life, no. Life does this to all of us. I mean, I see it as a massive lesson.
Oh, it's a wonderful blessing, and I've learned, I must say, I've been a very serious person for much of my life. Believe it or not, I love to laugh, find things to laugh at. But having grandchildren and
Yes.
having young ones has really allowed me to sometimes reach back and remember what it's like to be a child. When you
Mm.
don't have worries and you don't have thoughts about way in the future, you're really in the present moment and
Yes,
typically enjoying that moment.
there
You
it is.
and so
There it is.
that is exactly what I have learned from these little angels that are now part of my life.
Yeah. And to add to that, the playfulness, and you are very playful, and you have the best laugh in the world, and I adore you. I adore you from the moment I met you. But playfulness and that sense, you see, because I now feel that the horizons of my life are coming closer, the letting go of life, the release of life. It can happen any moment. We know that. Because of that, each moment that I'm in requires of me to show up fully because it's gone. And I'm so aware that when I do things now, I always say, that was beautiful, or that happened, because I don't know if I'll be doing it again. I don't know. This is not morbid. This is not, oh my God, this is not that. This is more a sense of a commitment to living life fully in the present moment.
Mm.
That's it. That's
It's
it.
interesting because sometimes we just kind of fall into the habit of
Mhm.
old ways and old
Yes.
ways of saying things. And I like to think that as I've gotten older, that I'm just kind of more aware and catch in the moment when I say something like I said yesterday that my friend Annie said. I'll tell you what she said. I was saying, oh, this week has been a week when my arthritis has just been a nomad. It's gone from the shoulders to the hands to the
Mm.
fingers to the knees to the toes. And I say it's just always it seems to do that when I have so much to do. And she said, up until now, she said, remember when we had that workshop with Eli and Joseph, that was something they told us to say that whatever it is that was bothering you, it's up until now. And then you leave it. And you're in this present moment when that is no longer your story and you move beyond it. And so
Mm. Mm.
little, just kind of little things like that. It is always nice to have. I always call Annie my accountability partner. What do you want to have carried forward?
Mm. Well, you mentioned at the beginning that I'm writing my Tales the Boatwoman, and that is exactly it. It feels like a legacy project for me. Um, the idea of writing this story about my ancestors, about my own life, and the wisdom teachings that I have learned on this journey, and leaving it for my grandsons, dedicating it to my grandsons, was exactly that, that the future, the unborn future, or the born future, um, the legacy is that which will be left behind. And I want it as a book. And the fact that it's the archetype of the boatwoman is very, very potent because the boatwoman is drifting on a river, and the river will lead to an ocean. So the boatwoman will merge with the ocean. So you see, it's all very. It's an image that feels so compelling. Um, the boatwoman she's on the river of life, and she goes to the embankments to connect with people, with San Miguel, with everything.
I want to just thank you. And Amber, is there anything else you'd like to leave?
I would just say, be kind to yourself.
Until next time, may you continue living, learning, and discovering what is possible at every age. This journey is not over. We're all still becoming. Thank you again for joining us on this journey of living, learning, and sharing wisdom. And I hope you join us the next time, the last Monday of July. Yeah, that's the next month. I lose track. And if you have a story, if you have insight, if you have a life experience you'd like to share, I'd like to hear from you. And you can reach me at Undria, that's Aundria, Undria Humphrey at gmail.com. So until next time, be kind, be well, stay curious, and keep becoming. Thank you.